With emerging technologies like VR and AR, more than ever, computer graphics consumption is getting way more attention, and with the immersive videos and creative content, the telesensation can actually mix with what one can express as real. Now, with all the interactive gestures and elaborate wraparounds that can totally take you away from reality, it is very easy for one to simply lose touch with what he or she can see as real or not. The term VR actually describes three-dimensional computer-generated environments, as this is replaced with normal reality. And the fun fact is these three-dimensional environments and objects can be created using 3D softwares like Maya, 3D Studio Max, Blender, Houdini, Modo, ZBrush, 3D Code, Softimage, and so on and so forth. Blender, which amongst all of the aforementioned tools is not just free, but at the same time is an open source tool that offers incredible features and incredible opportunities. Although some folks have actually gone ahead to say that the tools and functionalities that you get with Blender seems to rival certain premium apps, and this is always up for debate. But with the recent release of Blender 2.83, which actually comes with a whole lot of features including a virtual reality inspection tool, it is just a matter of time for Blender to catch up with some of these premium softwares. Of course, this is a very interesting innovation, and also the whole idea of this development is going towards an empowering state where it is giving way more tools and way more functionality to the free open source software community. This has opened a gateway to persons who wouldn't want to stay on the subscription or maybe pay excessive amounts to just simply own a VR software or 3D software to have a head start while working with 3D content or while creating stuff and also inspecting them in VR. How does Blender handle VR, and how do you actually get started with it? Today we're definitely going to take a look at that and see how this works. Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to askNK. Today we're going to take a trip down to the Eastern Mediterranean University at the Department of Visual Arts and Visual Communication, and there we're going to meet up with a friend, a colleague, and we're going to talk about VR and how this actually works. And today the main focus of what we're going to do is simply play around with the VR tool, see how it works, and also try some other possibilities of how you can actually get started with VR. We're going to make sure that you guys see all of the shady things that happens. If it crashes, we'll tell you it crashes. If it doesn't crash, we'll tell you it doesn't crash, so that you can have a head start and also know how this actually works. Today I want to try out the VR thing for Blender.
Yes.
And owing to the fact that you have the Oculus Rift and I don't have a VR headset, I think maybe we can try it together, and you're the expert for VR stuff.
Thank you.
And yeah, just in case you guys don't know, he has a couple of VR games which I'm going to put a link in the description for you guys to take a look at, and hopefully we might see how Blender holds up. Oh, already he has actually started testing some of these things out, because we kind of talked about it earlier and you guys can see this. So we'll talk about maybe the pros and cons, things you guys need to know about before we actually get started with, working with Blender. So we're going to try out the sculpting. Maybe we'll try out the scene inspection as well. And maybe we'll try out a couple of things.
Yes.
What do you think?
There's also options we're going to check, multiple plugins and different things. But we'll do our best to check it out.
Alright, so real quick, let's talk about how you can get the VR thing sorted out. So if you want to get VR for Blender, first of all, you need to go over to Blender's website, download the fresh copy of Blender 2.83 or later, as this in itself comes with a VR scene inspection support. Now, if you want to start working with Blender, there are certain things that you need to do. One of them is to come over to the link which I'm going to put in the description and see if the platform which you want to work with is currently supported. And of course, at the time of recording, Steam VR is not supported for OpenXR, which is actually powering Blender's virtual reality functionality at this point. But there is a workaround that, and I'm also going to tell you guys later on in the video. So just in case you own a HTC Vive or a Valve Index, you wouldn't miss out of the functionalities and opportunities that Blender stands to offer. So the supported device that you can actually work with is Windows Mixed Reality, the Oculus Rift, and also the Monado. Now, if you want to start working with this, I'm going to put a link in the description where you can take a look at modes of how you can install this. How you can work with the Oculus Rift is a little bit different. So first of all, you need to install the Rift software, which is directly here. I'm also going to put a link in the description for you to get that. There's also something that is slightly different from how you get started with working with the Oculus Rift that is not similar to what you get from the mixed reality or the Monado. So with a brand new version of Blender downloaded, once you go over to the installation folder, you'll be able to notice that right there is a Blender Oculus.cmd file. What you have to do is run the script that exists inside the directory, and with that, Blender is going to open, and on the sidebar you would notice that you now have the Blender VR menu, and this can be active by pressing N on the keyboard for you to be able to see this. Now, just in case you don't get to see this, how you can actually get this to work is pretty easy. All you have to do is go over to the edit menu, go to preference, within the add-ons, just simply type the word VR, and you'll be able to activate Blender VR. Now with Blender VR, it is very interesting to actually note one particular thing. Blender VR doesn't support you to create anything directly in Blender by simply using VR, as presently this is more like an inspection tool. So with this, you can easily inspect your scene, and then you can go through and make certain decisions of how things should be placed and how things should be done. Now with this in mind, what we've actually done is download an open scene that has been made available by the Blender Animation Studio, which is the Spring Splash screen. Now with this here, we fired this up and then played around with it just to take a look at how Blender seems to perform with shading and also how it performs while you're rendering.
Okay, this is cool, very cool. We can go into Eevee at this point, maybe. Could be very slow, but... Ooh! Wow! What the hell? Is this... what is this? Is this Eevee?
No, that's the shading. It's trying to...
Ah, okay. It's getting the textures again slowly. But I can see them, and the lighting looks amazing. They have to optimize this though. I love it. It looks interesting. I think we got some good visuals now. But after this is loaded, I'm going to walk around as well. And that will be, I think, a good shot. Like being able to get really close to this dog.
You can see the textures on the...
Yeah, she's loaded, kind of half. Yeah, so we can like inspect it closely now. You can see her hand and the very fine details on the...
You're actually getting close to the CPU.
Okay.
Like in real life.
I know. But look at this detail. Like that's right here. Okay, her eyes. The eye shader is very, very subtle. I can see the depth of the pupil. But it's still loading something. What is it loading? I don't know. But like, look at the quality of the surface here. Wow. And her hand is very realistic, and you can see the nail. That's great. The dog. Dog is... yeah, the teeth and everything. Exactly. Very nice design. And you can like appreciate it way more this way. Like the little things on the ground, the dirt. Everything is visible in this mode. Though the background plate doesn't work in this case because of the alignment issues. But I love this mode. Alright. Feels like the dog is right here. Like, alright.
And obviously you can see once you jump into VR, you even appreciate the art way more. The fact that you're just immersed into this world of, you know, looking at the 3D object regardless of the ridiculous scene that you'll be having around you in real life, you would literally have that strong connection with the model or with the scene that you're working on. At this time, you can appreciate the little lights, the little textures, all of those beautiful stuff that you have. And if you're actually thinking about working with VR and Blender, you want to simply inspect your scene directly in Blender, this actually makes a lot of sense. Although there are a couple of drawbacks which I would also state. Now, one of the major drawbacks that you get is if you're running this on a lower end computer, then there might be a couple of issues. We're running these on an NVIDIA GTX 1080, and for the most part, it loads certain scenes very well, but for other scenes, it might just simply crash. Now, if you're also thinking about working with heavy scenes, you might simply want to stay within the wireframe or the default shading, because once you jump into shading that contains textures or even jump into Eevee, Blender begins to weep. And one of the beautiful things with the Blender VR toolset that you can work with is you can either choose to mirror your camera. So in case you want to mirror the VR camera, you can do that. If you want to also show the VR camera directly in the scene, this is also something that is very possible. Another cool feature that is also existing with this is you can also go ahead and select the exact camera type that you want to play with. So you can have about 10, 15, 20 different cameras in your scene, and you can navigate across these and select the exact camera which you want to use to inspect your scene. Most times, one of the things which we notice is the Oculus Rift just simply bounces you a little bit backwards and not at the exact or at the precise point where the camera is. These are a couple of drawbacks that we got to notice. Maybe this is peculiar to, our testing and probably the setup which we have, but for the most part, if you're trying to get into VR by simply using the VR feature that now exists for Blender, these are a couple of things that you need to keep in mind. But then this is just using the default Blender VR that is being powered by the OpenXR that exists with the new build of Blender, which is Blender 2.83. But if you're looking for something more, something even way bigger than just inspecting your scene, you want to model and make certain decisions and not just inspect your scene, there is an amazing Blender VR plugin that you can use, and this is Maori. I'm going to put a link in the description where you can find that. So Maori is an amazing tool which you can actually use to sculpt, light, and also navigate across Blender by default. This add-on is available within their GitHub, which you're also going to find in the description, as this supports various tools. So if you have a HTC Vive, if you have a Microsoft mixed reality headset, or maybe you have an Oculus Rift, this is going to be extremely useful. The beautiful part about this is they also support Steam VR, so you can actually proceed to use this and work with it. And at the same time, there is also the fourth client DLL that is also attached to this. So if you're trying to run any of the aforementioned headsets, you will be able to actually have the best time trying to create and also experience how it feels like to work directly in VR using Blender. So what we did was go over, download this. I'm going to put all those links in the description, download everything that you need. And with all of these things done, the first time we decided to test this by simply using the Oculus Rift, this didn't work. The app couldn't connect to the device, and vice versa. So what we did was, since we already had Steam installed on the PC, we decided to get the Steam patch, which we also included, and made the plugin think like we were making use of a HTC Vive, and in that way this automatically worked. So installing this is pretty simple. Just simply grab what you need from the GitHub, and by default this would give you a fresh copy of Blender, which you can choose to use or choose not to use. But then if you need all of those other plugins to work, you have to copy the DLL files that are responsible for your headset, and you need to put them in the folder that contains your Blender. Now with that done, all you have to do is just simply double click the Blender exe file, and this would pop up. Now once this pops up, by default you don't notice anything. All you have to do to actually get the client visible is you can simply go over to window, click on new VR window, and once you click on new VR window, you will be able to actually get this thing working. So there is also a video that actually describes how you can get the installation working, so I'm also going to put a link to that in the description. And this is officially from the guys at Maori on how you can work with the Blender XR. And for anyone who is trying to test this out, this is totally fine. So first of all, you will be able to notice your joystick. So the joystick which you have, or the controllers that you have, you'll be able to see them directly in your scene, and they have various functions, and these functions determines on what you're working on. So for some sections you can simply jump into grease pencil, some sections you can actually work directly with the sculpting tool, and finally you can jump into the modeling section and also start modeling. Now within the modeling section, there are specific tools that are made available for anyone who wants to work with. You can simply toggle between the left controller and the right controller to choose what you want to do at a given time. This is actually very handy, as you can set all of your modeling tools on one controller, and then you can set all of your transform tools on the other controller. On the other hand, you can also pinch and drag, and by simply pinching and dragging, you can zoom directly into your scene. The same thing that happens, or the same way you get to, navigate directly in Blender VR, that is also how you make use of the XR to also navigate directly in. So you can pinch and you can drag to zoom in, and at the same time you can pinch and push back to zoom out. So one of the things that we tried was trying to create multiple objects. So we actually got this one going, as this was very, very interesting to do.
Let's go extrude. And we have this. Here's the extrude button. That's the big button, extrude.
Okay.
Very nice. This moves it. Alright. Let me create primitives now.
Can we insert?
Yeah. Insert faces. And then I deleted it. And then I make it big and I'm in it. Wow. And I can actually go in by doing that, but there's also flying mode. I don't remember now how to do it. Is it this one? Yeah. Flying. This flying thing goes where your head is looking. Okay. Now let's go to add primitives. And let's add these. Around my hand it does this rotation. If I select the face, I can just move it in 3D. If I go into object mode, and I can move the whole object.
So afterwards, while trying how to create this and, went ahead to light this, play with it, which was very satisfying. Now, after that, we decided to test how this holds up when you're trying to sculpt. For the most part, this works, right? But it is not as much as you think it will. There are very limited sculpting tools that are available, probably because this is still within its development, as it is a development initiative by the guys at Maori. So hopefully they're going to work more on this and also expand it, or maybe a third party plugin creator or add-on creator would do something. But right now the tools that are available are quite limited. So with the limitation of the tools that you have, you can do some basic sculpts, you can do some smoothing, you can hold down shift and smooth, you can actually do some trimming, you can do some pinching, and you can also use the clay brush. So this way you can just do your very basic task, the same kind of task that you might want to do, but the intuitiveness is just something that doesn't really feel so right, because most times you actually get your feedback a little bit late, while sometimes your feedback is just way too early and you actually have little or no time to decide on what you want to do. Now, if you're an architect, you might actually find this one very interesting, as you can simply walk around your scene and light certain things. But when you're doing the sculpting, this is actually something that is still in development. Another thing which we tried out was the grease pencil, and we jumped directly into it and we started playing with it. So with the grease pencil, it was very easy, and it is very crazy how you can actually draw in 3D space. This time you're not just creating cubes and approximating where these cubes are, or you're not just creating lines and approximating where these lines are. You are actually dropping them exactly where you want them to be. So if you're working with a grease pencil or you're modeling, you're actually getting exactly what you want. But for some reason, this is still not stable, as in most cases, while you're trying to work with something like this, it either just jumps a crash on you, or maybe it just freezes, and over a period of time you just can't find exactly what controller you were using, or maybe the controller just simply switches to something else, and it is just a bit crazy. The component mode versus the object mode is also something that a lot of people would want to know about, and this comes in pretty handy, as you can easily switch between the component mode by simply using the dial, and also switch over to the object mode by also simply using the dial. The transform and every other thing, everything simply works within the dial. And when you want to make multiple selections, you actually need to hold down the button that specifies as shift within the given time where you're working to make certain selection. So this is more like how you can actually get things up and running. And for anyone who wants to dive directly into VR, this is pretty fine. It is extremely useful, so you can just simply dive directly into VR and experience these things for yourself. And for those interested in sculpting, you will not get the same kind of experience that you will get while working with the Oculus Medium or while working with Quill. So you're definitely not going to get that level of sculpting. You will be able to do something, maybe make some changes, some light tweaks, look around the model, but like sculpting is definitely not something that you'll be able to do that much. Of course, there are also certain drawbacks, and there is a huge drawback to so many things that you can do. But for the most part, if you want to immerse yourself and feel what your scene looks like and feel what you're doing, you would notice that there is an immense difference between when you look at the screen and when you are actually working directly in VR. That is something that you cannot really explain, as the way you actually get into the scene and feel the world around you is just totally different. So with the VR technology now here, and with more and more developers, more and more artists embracing this, the sky is just barely the starting point for a lot of things that we can create. The whole idea of playing with your imagination, the whole idea of immersive technology has just begun. And with Blender being part of tools that are not just open source, but also a tool that is implementing this new set of technology, it is only a matter of time before it begins to compete with the big players. And a huge shout out to Eastern Mediterranean University, and also the Department of Visual Arts and Visual Communication, and finally to our very own friend and colleague Mohammed Karabulut for making this video a success. Now if you want to follow him and you want to see certain things that he's working on, I'm going to put a link to his Twitter where you can see his current project and also previous project, just in case you're interested in creating games. And then that's going to be about it. I would like to know what you guys think about this in the comment section. And of course, if you like this video or you learned something from this, you can go ahead and give it a like, and don't forget to share with a friend. And if you're new here, it's going to be amazing for you to hit the subscribe button and also turn on notifications so that you don't miss the next video or the next update. And until I see you guys again with a tutorial update, Free Friday, Tutorial Tuesday, tips and tricks, things like this. Peace.
Oh, it's still here, because when I get it out, I think it disables it. So well,
Actually go and play with it and see how it works. I think that way a lot of people would know what the possibilities are and what they cannot do with it.
I'm really waiting for the mainstream software to implement VR properly. Like, imagine ZBrush.
Oh, that would be so cool.
I would just use ZBrush like that.